Ksante has just been released, and challenger players from around the world are racing to see who can find the best way to play him. He is a top laner, but these challengers are also playing him in the jungle, mid lane, and even support, which are much more off-meta roles. In top lane, he's a full tank bruiser. In mid lane, he's able to insect people, dragging the enemy through walls to their death. In the jungle, he's a crazy ganker, and in bot lane, he is a brick wall of a support. So I watched a ton of hours of high elo VODs and talked to these high elo players to find out which of these roles are actually good and which challenger players are just trolling, and already I would confidently say that top lane is definitely not his best role. But one of the most unique things about Ksante is that he was released with 2 extra skins, and if you're anything like me, you'll have seen all of these cool new League skins coming out. Like them, but think they're a little expensive, even up to $20 per skin. But I do have a solution, just by playing League of Legends tournaments using Z-League, the sponsor of this video. This is a tournament site where you get matched with players in your own rank. You can play any role, and you can even win cash prizes while doing it. It's a very fair system. All you need to do is join a tournament on the site, then queue up for a league game, which, let's be honest, we're all going to do anyway, so you might as well get rewarded for doing it. It works for solo queue, normal games, even ARAMs. Open to any rank, so it's perfect for anyone. Sign up for Z-League now using my link in the description and get 500 free credits to use. Join your first free tournament and start winning, so you can finally unlock that expensive skin you've always wanted. Back to Ksante and his off-meta roles. To quickly summarize how his skills actually work and catch everyone up, Ksante passive. Every ability he hits marks the enemy. Auto-attacking them deals max health damage. This is the core of his kit, and it's important to mention because it's the reason he can build 6 tank items and still do very good damage. Ksante Q, just like Yasuo's Q, with 3 charges, but it costs mana to use, and instead of just knocking an enemy up, it knocks them back into you. Great for setting up ganks and his other abilities. His W makes him unstoppable, so he can dodge CC with it, and then he charges it up and rams forward, dealing damage, knocking back, and stunning. His E is a small dash with a shield, and it has its range extended if he's near an ally. His ult is point and click, it pushes an enemy back, and this can include through a wall if they're near one. This is best for splitting enemies up from their team and killing them 1v1. His ult also transforms him into a new form, which instantly removes 45% of his max health, 65% of his bonus armor, and magic resist, making him super squishy, in exchange for making his other abilities work faster and higher damage, which is how he's able to 1v1 people. It's a really simple kit, but it does have some very unique ways to make plays that no other champion can. Starting in top lane, a role that I would almost call an automatic win for Ksante. He is a brick wall of a champion that uses his AoE Q to push the wave continuously. At level 1 he takes Q, it's on quite a low cooldown and does AoE damage, and slows the enemy, so it's really easy to get control of the wave with. Challengers charge up their 3rd Q and force the enemy to walk away, or risk a bad trade inside the minions. Level 2 they take E, getting the shield and the dash. At level 3 some players take Q again for even more push, or the W to give them a good way to block CC. This is so strong in some matchups. If you time it right, you completely remove one of the enemy's abilities, and then can follow up with good CC of your own into a damage combo. The main theme of this lane is to always have a minion advantage, thanks to how good your Q is at pushing. Good players use this minion advantage to charge up the Q, and then pulling the enemy top into their wave. This sets up a good trade for you, and also means the enemy doesn't really want to trade as they'll be taking all the damage from your minions. Because of how this champion works and how slow his movement speed is early on, he is very vulnerable to getting ganked. But after level 6, things get a lot more interesting. Instead of only being able to run away from ganks, Ksante can outplay them in a ton of different ways, like using ult to pull the enemy jungler into his tower, turning it from a 1 vs 2 gank into a very easy 1 vs 1 instead. Or if enemies start the gank with a stun, using your W to dodge it, and then isolating one of the enemies to give you a dash away, making yourself as hard to kill as possible. Ksante is also one of the only top lane champions you can't ward against, because he can pull enemies through walls to his jungler without them even having to risk walking over any wards. Top lane is pretty good, but mid lane is a bit more unique. Mid lane as a role is full of lots of range picks, but Ksante can handle them pretty well. The laning at level 1, 2 and 3 are very similar, taking control of the wave even against wave clear champions. The most important part about laning mid is how you use your combo. This is because trades in mid lane are a lot shorter and a lot rarer than top, so when you get the chance to trade you want to make sure you're using it properly. Ideally these challenger players charge up their Q, then E dash forwards into the Q knockup, then the W charge to set up damage and the stun. This role also lets Ksante use his early skirmish power just to win games at level 3. free. You have access to so much more of the map, and you'll always have priority in lane thanks to your AoE damage Q, so if there's ever an early fight in River, you can join it. Ksante is a carry and a bruiser, and has lots of CC, and is a tank. He's not the best at starting fights, but if he can join one, then there's a good chance he's going to win it. And at level 6, mid lane definitely has the best trick. Usually mid lane in high elo is quite a slow farming lane, but when Ksante is there, he can pull enemies out of the safe lane, even under their tower, into a new location where he can kill them. One of the most annoying things in solo queue is when you're super strong, but the enemy plays safe and refuses to let you go for a 1 versus 1 fight. With Ksante, this isn't going to happen. These are why I think mid is really his best role. Now for the most off-meta role, support. Ksante support does make sense, because he has a huge amount of CC and tankiness, so he can be a frontliner. And on top of that, thanks to his passive, he still has reasonable damage. However, in reality, his laning phase is awful. In fact, at level 1, it's probably worse than that, with him easily getting pushed off wave by any ranged matchup. This definitely is a better pick if you're against a melee support. Once he gets to level 3, he can be quite impactful in 2 versus 2 fights. Your goal is to tank the enemy's engage for your AD carry, then use your knockback on a target to pull them in, then dashing back to your AD carry using your E, which also gives them a shield, and these let you peel out of the trade. But he also does have a good CC combo, creating kills by landing a Q3 knockup, which CC chains into a W pushback, insecting the enemy into your team. You can also Q flash to extend the knockup range, or if an enemy's going for a big play, you can sacrifice yourself to ult an important target out of the fight, saving your teammates. And the last role these challenges are testing, jungle, a role that Riot are really encouraging in the next season. Ksante's clear is above average, doing red buff, kiting it with his Q knockups and auto attacks, taking his W and doing golems, then to Raptors, taking a second point in his Q for extra AoE damage, using his W to group up the enemies so that his Q does more damage, then completing the full clear with wolves into double camp, finishing with crab. This path will get easier and stronger next season with the new items, and on the PBE, Ksante can clear 6 camps before 3 minutes 15 no problem, so I think he's currently being balanced around the new items, not the current ones. After clearing, there is one small problem. Ksante's ganks kinda suck before level 6. He does have the long range dash when he's going near an ally to get into the fight, but his CC is not very good for chasing people down. His W locks him in place when he uses it, and his Q takes 3 uses to charge up, which means at least 7 seconds of charging up and waiting for the cooldowns to come back. After laning phase, all the styles kind of line up with the same strategies, with support and jungle focusing on roaming around to make plays, and top and mid lane going to a side lane to keep farming and try and get 1 versus 1s. Ksante gets his mythic, and you can now really see the skill level of these challenges. Mid game is all about making the right split-second decision, and if you do it correctly, Ksante will win any fight, even in an outnumbered situation. In teamfights, there is one thing to focus on: your ult. The best way to explain how challengers use it is to compare it to Mordekaiser ult. You want to use it to split up one enemy from their team, ideally one that you yourself can solo kill. There are millions of ways you can use this ability, just like Lee Sin's kick. For example, ulting a jungler out of the pit to stop their smite, ulting a champion into your team to create a pick, which lets you take a 5 versus 4 fight, or even ulting a fed enemy carry to waste their time and try to 1 versus 1 them while your team wins the rest of the fight. Ksante is both a fighter and a peel champion. If enemies want to dive his carry, then he'll be there with an actual wall to stop them, and even his ult, which he can use for example on an assassin to pull them out of the fight. Ksante top will be the most meta role for this champion, but we should rate jungle, mid and support as well, especially because I think mid is probably the best one. Jungle, I would say don't play him right now. His clear isn't yet good enough, and neither are really his ganks. In 1 more week we get the new jungle items, so it's worth waiting for that to happen. For support, Ksante is a reasonably good tank support with good CC. He's a good frontline and has a playmaking ult, but his early laning is very bad, and with his low range he can struggle to engage for his team, so in the average game, another tank support will have a higher impact. Saving the best for last, I do think mid is his best role for a few reasons. Firstly, top is just a lower impact role than mid, so if you want to be rewarded and win more games, then pick any top laner in mid, and you can do just as well. The current best build for Ksante in mid and top lane is this tanky build, as of course it also gives you the most damage. Starting Doran Shield, then going early tank boots so you can win your matchup, into Sunfire most games, but Korean challengers are preferring Iceborne Gauntlet for more slows and playmaking, then very simply ending the build with all tank items to fit the game that you're in. The jungle build is very similar, just having blue smite so you can catch enemies easier, and the option to take ghost Ghost instead of Flash, which I think is key to making his ganks better. It's a good option for top and mid lane as well, either that or teleport. The support build starts deal shoulder guards, and goes the same items. I think it's the least optimized build so far, and would be interested to see how a utility build does on him, similar to our on support video. The main runes for mid and top are this Grasp page, but Conqueror is another good option. Same Conqueror page for jungle, and this Glacial Augment page is best for playmaking on support. But in some matchups it may be necessary to take Aftershock just so you can survive. Remember that Ksante is really a season 13 champion, and so we'll soon know his true power. And while you're practicing your new off-meta champions, why not join some Z-League tournaments, the sponsor of this video, play some solo queue, normal games, or even ARAMs, and win prizes at the same time. Link in the description. Thanks so much for watching.